Hi, my name is David Mello. I live at 700 First Street. I'm concerned tonight and worried about the city I love, and the reason is that redevelopment, and particularly redevelopment in the Southwest, has been talked about for some time in these chambers. But that's what's such a concern to me. The reason being is that as much as we've talked about these plans and this plan in particular, this plan is still incredibly vague and in many ways contradicts itself as far as I can see. The things that are unclear about this plan, and I think I've looked at this plan a lot more closely than the typical person in the public, is that there hasn't been enough of a consideration of traffic impact. There hasn't been enough of a consideration of what infrastructure improvements will be needed. There hasn't been flooding studies. I don't know if a civil engineer has been involved in this plan at all or any other experts. And most importantly, the public and open space has not been planned out in any sort of consistent way. And what's most lacking in the public and open space is inconsistencies about what's going to be a grade, what's going to be allowed to be built upon, and what is going to be sacred and not allowed to be built upon. What has been clear about this plan is which parties I think are going to benefit from it. This plan, in every form I've seen it in, and every reference I've seen made to it, the people who own land in the Southwest right now are going to greatly benefit from this plan. It's currently zoned as industrial property, I believe. The master plan would call for it to be rezoned as residential, probably capping out at 5 or 6 stories. That's what the master plan would call for. We've been bannering around plans that seem to call for 8 to 12-story buildings throughout the Southwest. 8 to 12-story buildings. So we know the landowners are going to benefit from it because the way the plan has come forth in all of its different forms, it consistently involves a major upzoning, a major windfall for people who didn't buy property that was zoned for that sort of height or that sort of development. The city's going to benefit from this in the form of the pilot payments. Payments in lieu of taxes, instead of traditional taxes, are going to go directly to the city. They can bypass the school district if they want to bypass the school district. They can bypass the county. That's obviously going to be a windfall for the city. Architects, real estate people, they'll benefit from this plan as well. That's been clear. But unfortunately, the other things, like traffic studies, infrastructure, and the park, have been unclear. We have so much detail when it comes to these building heights, so much detail when it comes to where parking lots can be put, where parking will be allowed, where 8 stories will be allowed, where 12 stories will be allowed. I don't understand why we haven't had detail as to exactly where there's going to be a park. My biggest concern is in this plan, people mentioned tonight how the Southwest people met with Academy and talked about a park plan. Well, I was sitting in those meetings. There weren't that many people in there, and I was one of them. And I have to tell you, one thing that was clear throughout each of those meetings is we were trying to see if a property owner in the area might be able to find some common ground with us, was that blocks 14 and blocks 12 would not be developed, that they would remain at grade with nothing underneath them, and they would not be developed. Every time I've seen this plan, there are references made to a corner building that's going to exist on that small triangular lot where the downtown pub is, that will be allowed to go as high as 8 stories high. And then you're going to have some sort of a sloping effect, closing off Jackson Street, which is a major entryway into this city. The only left turn you can make until you go up to Park is on Jackson Street. Closing off Jackson Street and sloping down to the next lot to the west of 14th, which is block 12. And then eventually, just a few yards or so, maybe a dozen or so yards before Harrison Street, coming down to some sort of a level grade. That was never part of the discussions that we had with Academy when we were bouncing around ideas. Not making a plan. We didn't have the authority to make any sort of plan. Then when you got to the other side of Harrison, to the west of Harrison, we talked about maybe doing something where things would grade up a little bit. You'd have some sort of a sledding hill, some other activities. No more than 2 stories. That's not what I've seen in this plan in its many incarnations. That is what should be in this plan. It strikes me as so incredibly greedy when there is a plan developed that's going to call for 12-story buildings throughout a neighborhood that I've heard many council members say was marred with this 17-story building. I live in that 17-story building. Yet, there's going to be 12-story buildings on every other block. And despite all of this upzoning, this incredible windfall that the property owners are going to get, who can suddenly build a 12-story building where before they would have been able to build a 1- or 2-floor industrial use, despite that, we can't seem to keep 14, 12, and about 50% of 10 and 9 sacred as park space. And we can't seem to keep 14 and 12 at ground level without anything below it. We have flooding problems in the area. I'm not an engineer, but I am a law student who spent enough time around environmentalists and flooding, and I've worked for the Highlands Council, which was all about flooding. And if you have non-permeable surface that water cannot penetrate, everything I've seen, that seems to help a flooding issue. You don't build below it. You work on some sort of way of having the water, the land, everything be able to drain through itself. It works like a Brita almost. But nobody's thought about that. Nobody seems to bring in experts to try to explore that. Nobody has. I don't know why. I don't know why this hasn't been done.
David, I just want to have Mr. Camp comment.
If I could say one more thing, because Mr. Campos, I'd like you to comment about this too. You've often mentioned in the past about 17-story buildings and all the variances, I believe you said 13 that were given for the Sky Club.
Yes.
And how we can't have more around us. You also mentioned earlier today that you look out your window from the skyline and you see 2 new buildings.
Yes,
Well, those 2 new buildings are between 5 and 6 stories tall.
absolutely.
Every building other than the Sky Club in our area, Harrison Court, okay, the Neapolitan across from the Housing Authority, have all been about 5 to 6 stories tall.
And
No, park attacks.
wait, what are you talking about? Hoboken Grand? Oh, you took.
Hoboken Grand was built years ago. I'm talking about since people occupied the Sky Club.
4 years ago.
The things that have been, okay, I'm talking about after the Sky Club. People were not in the Sky Club when the Hoboken Grand was occupied and had certificates of occupancy before the Sky Club. Since the Sky Club, what has gone up, the Neapolitan is about, what, 5 stories tall?
No green.
Observer Lofts is about 6. My point is, you're developing a plan that is supposedly saving us from outrageous buildings, but it's calling for buildings that are 12 stories in an area where 6-story buildings are being built.
Where you want to park.
The emphasis should be carving a park out of that area. And with all the upzoning that is being allowed under these plans and their many incarnations, I don't understand why that can't be done. Why the greed has to result in a plan for an 8-story building on Block 14 when you already have 12-story buildings going on all those other blocks.
Mr. Campos.
Once again, I agree with you. I 100% agree with you. In fact, I agree with you so much after the last meeting that we had here, the public presentation, you and I discussed this at length.
Yes.
And I left here with a comment from you that said, if you can do this, X, you're probably going to win a lot of support. Which is make sure you said to me privately that if I was to make sure.
I might have said something to the effect that people would be more supportive of you if you did something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I think so, yeah.
So, you're right, and we accomplished that. Ms. Vandal, could we talk about those 2, that 12 and 14, please? Can you talk about the changes that he doesn't know about? Thank you so much for bringing
No, wait, hold on.
Wait.
I want to address.
Wait, Councilman Campos.
Let Ms.
Let's
Vandal
ask
just
Ms.
talk
Vandal.
about it first, and then.
All right. Councilman.
He does know about him because I told him at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, but
So
Councilman.
he knew about it, so he falsely represented.
All right, Councilman, you would like, hold on.
Okay.
Ms. Vandal, you have the floor.
He knew about it.
Ms. Vandal has the floor.
I'd first like to comment on the location of the park and the structure that was referred to just now at the, on what is shown as Block 14. That has been eliminated from the plan.
Thank you.
Block 14 will, because it will be difficult and a longer-term issue to close Jackson Street, we've indicated that it may, at least initially, have some kind of, like a monumental structure which would relate to the park itself until Jackson Street is closed. But all of Block 12 is going to be parkland at grade, entirely at grade, no structure under it or in it.
When you say monumental, Ms. Vandor, do you mean residential in any way on Block
No,
14?
no, I meant decorative,
And-
you know, like somebody on a horse.
But at grade and level,
Yes,
14 and 12 at
at
grade
12,
and level.
entirely at grade and level. Blocks 9 and 10, which are already merged, and begin at the light rail station where the Academy Bus property is located, we'll have a very limited area immediately east of the light rail track for residential development. The rest of blocks 9 and 10 will have what will most likely be some kind of a garage structure, which will be built over so that the rest of blocks 9 and 10 will have, as I described it earlier, two different large level areas, which themselves being on top of structure will at one level be up 10 feet and the other will be up a total of 20 feet from the adjacent streets. But all of this will be designed,
Contiguous,
yes, and with...
nothing larger than stories, says the gentleman, just as the gentleman stated.
Right, exactly.
Thank you.
Okay,
And-
thank you, Ms.
And just to
Vander.
qualify the building heights, the base building height permitted in this district is 6 stories. If the developer is willing to do a series of bonuses which are identified in the plan, they can go to 12 stories. But the base building height is 6, and even at 6, they have to have a developer agreement with you, and they still have to make certain contributions. But to go to 12, there's a series of other provisions that they have to comply with.
Thank you. Okay, Dawn Zimmer.
No, he's not finished.
Oh, all right, I thought you were done.
Finished.
All right, Dawn, you're next. Go ahead, finish up.
Mr. Campos, you had very briefly talked to Mr. Camerano and said, well, you know, I had known about something. You see, what I know is this, is a lot of...
That's all.
Okay. A lot of different things are said, and I don't have any mistrust of when somebody tells me something might be done. But the thing is, we need more than quick discussion off the record about things that could be done. We need to have a plan that has a map that says, okay, well, if I
Did we
potentially
discuss-
have the same plan you have...
Did we discuss blocks 12 and 14 specifically before the meeting tonight?
Yes.
Did I tell you that they were going to be level and at grade?
Yes.
Okay.
And, well,
I
we started...
apologize
I don't...
not being able to rely on what I tell you.
It's not that. And I don't want to come
Okay.
across, Mr. Camerano, as if I don't rely on what you're telling me. I do.
Mr. Campos?
But you are one member of the council, and what my concern is not what trusting you as an individual.
Sir,
Mr. Campos?
My concern is whether a plan, when it is published, will have a map that makes no reference to buildings on those 2 blocks. I do trust you. But you know what, Mr. Camerano? I need a plan that says that.
which,
Mr. Campos? Mr. Campos?
you just articulated the reason why we took the vote tonight that we took. We couldn't do anything but have offside comments about this. We couldn't talk about this in this forum because you had no public document. You just said exactly the reason why. After I spent 20, 25 minutes with you discussing this point, I went away and I said, I absolutely believe David is right. And I went and made my phone calls, got the council. Every member of this council said, absolutely, Chris, I agree with you. Let's get it to the planner. And we accomplished that goal. There was nothing else we could have done.
Okay, but, all right, my concern is this. That plan in front of you doesn't have any reference to there being able to be buildings on 12 or 14?
I see open space.
No.
green.
Absolutely not. It was removed.
On page 57, it's green, says other potential open space location.
Other potential. Yeah, other potential doesn't mean
All right.
green. All right, well, look,
All right, look, David. if you
page
can't- hold on,
59,
David.
we still have buildings in the
David,
picture.
David, we can't, we can't take the time to read it now.
You know what, then
Excuse
do
me,
then do
I
this,
recognize
please.
Dawn Zimmer.
Put the plan out between now and the zoning board meeting so everybody in the public can see it, and then have that zoning board
Dawn.
meeting not in a small room downstairs,
David.
but in a large room
David,
where people
sit
can
down,
discuss
David.
it.
David, sit down.